It's time for Windows Weekly. Microsoft suing Google. Apple's suing Amazon. Amazon's going after Apple. It's a complicated world, but Paul Thurrott explains all next on Windows Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Windows Weekly is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com. This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott, episode 202, recorded Thursday, March 31st, 2011. Opera, not Oprah. Windows Weekly is brought to you by GoToAssist Express. If you're in tech support, clients rely on you for fast and reliable service. Help them the easy way with GoToAssist Express. For a free 30-day trial, visit gotoassist.com/windows. And by squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to publish a high-quality website or blog. For a free 14-day trial, go to squarespace.com/windows. And by MailRoute. MailRoute is a secure hosted service that filters viruses and spam for companies of any size. Save 10% off for the life of your account by visiting mailroute.info. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show that Windows Weekly. I'm working on a trademark, Paul Thurrott. I wanted some sort of, let's get ready to Windows or something. I don't know. He'll sue you if you do.
I was going to say, even if that is a parody, he would probably sue you.
I know.
Just to make the point.
So we won't use that.
Right. It's more touchier than Frank Stallone's lawyers.
It's what time. Windows Weekly, ladies and gentlemen, here he is, the man in charge at the SuperSite for Windows, winsupersite.com, the news editor for Windows IT Pro, consultant and analyst for Penton Media, and the author of many fine books, including the Windows Phone Secrets, Super Bible, Mr. Paul Thurrott.
How you doing?
How you doing? How you doing?
How you doing?
How you doing? Joey's got a new show. It's called Episodes. Have you seen Episodes?
No, and I never will.
Show. Oh.
No.
It makes fun of him.
Then it sounds great, but I still...
How you doing?
Give me a break.
He mocks his character. People come up and say, how you doing? Oh, yeah, he's doing it. Matt LeBlanc. He looked good. He looked good in a short sleeve shirt. That's all. That's all he had to do. Let us talk about Windows. Really, I think that's probably a better subject than last night's television action.
We do have a lot of Windows stories today. I know that's going to disappoint some people.
You got the email, did you?
It's always a problem.
You got the email. How you doing? So, boy, you know, when you use the word Microsoft and antitrust in the same sentence,
I know.
It's cause for
certain imagery evokes. Yeah.
In this case, it ain't Microsoft; it's Google.
Yeah, or more specifically, Microsoft launching an official antitrust complaint against Google.
Wow. In
the European Union, simply because the EU has proven itself to be more aggressive along these lines.
It's a sympathetic ear.
Yeah. And plus, let's face it, who knows more about how this works than Microsoft? I mean, if you're going to game the system, you have to be an expert, and Microsoft is the expert. So,
oh yeah, they're saying, hey, we had a lot of experience in the last decade on antitrust.
Right.
Let's put it to good use.
Based on the unbelievable storm that we weathered, we think this might be antitrust.
Wow. So it's about search, right?
That's about three things. So, yeah, search is one of them. Also online advertising. And then, interestingly, smartphones. And maybe not quite in the way that you would expect. The search stuff is interesting because obviously, Google is dominant in search. I read somewhere, maybe the New York Times, or somewhere, someone pointed out something that I thought was actually pretty smart, which was that, in the U.S., Google has about 65% of the search market. In most places in Europe, they actually have 95%, right? They're extremely dominant. But the bit I had sort of forgotten about is that there is almost no competition left. Microsoft, in many ways, is the last company directly competing with Google for internet search.
Ask is gone.
Yeah,
there's Blacko.
Yeah, well, there's things like Wolfram Alpha, which is not the same,
No.
thing, obviously. But as far as, a pure internet, Google-style internet search, I mean, Bing is pretty much it, right? They're
the only strong competitor. Yahoo's using Bing.
Yahoo's using Bing. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. So it is an interesting situation. And, yeah, I mean, I think in the same way that, not that being dominant, or having a monopoly equates to antitrust problem. I think that was one of the learnings out of the Microsoft antitrust fiascos. But, it depends on how you get there. And it also depends on how you behave toward your competition. And what Microsoft is saying in this case is that, and this is actually kind of interesting, they have put in specific blockers to their own services, especially YouTube, but not only YouTube, that is preventing Bing from completely indexing them. So Google is acting to give its competitor a disadvantage, which is actually illegal in this country, at least, and based on the way the EU acts, I would say under EU law as well. So,
but say that again. So Google is blocking.
This is according to Microsoft. What Microsoft says is that that Google has put in place specific blockers to prevent Bing from being able to completely index Google's services, including but not limited to YouTube. So in the case of YouTube, there was some percentage. We can only index 40% of YouTube, or whatever the number was. Obviously, Google can index 100%. So when people search for videos, Google search has an unfair advantage because it has the complete index.
I think they have a point there.
Assuming it's true, right? I mean, these are allegations.
Well, and I'm sure Google says, "Oh, it's an API limitation." Twitter, for instance, says you can't suck everything down from Twitter. You can only because we can't afford to give you everything, or you have to buy the fire hose. So maybe that's the
Google.
theory.
I haven't looked at this yet. I mean, it's unfortunate the way my week works is that Monday through Thursday I write news stories, and then on Friday I do short takes, which is a bunch of shorter blurbs. And what happens sometimes is that a Friday will come along and there's an important story that I feel needs more, space than just a little blurb. So that may happen tomorrow because obviously in the wake of these allegations, Google has already and will continue to reply in some public fashion and try to dispute these allegations. So Google has come back with some general statements so far, but I haven't studied them enough to say anything intelligent about their response and whether or not Microsoft is correct and all that. But right now, I think what I can accurately portray is what Microsoft is accusing them of. And it is very interesting, so internet search is the obvious one. Advertising, too, maybe should have been obvious because really that's how Google makes money, right? Google has an ad platform. Actually, they have more than one ad platform. And Microsoft has their own ad platform. And there are other companies with ad platforms. But what they're basically saying is that Google has in its contracts with advertisers that they cannot use software from third parties that would compare the results from multiple ad platforms, giving them a better idea of how their campaigns were working compared to the other suppliers. So in other words, they can't run an ad campaign on Bing and one on Google and then compare the results and say, hey, actually, in this case, it's working better in Bing. We should put more resources over there. They don't let them do that. According
That's very interesting, yeah.
And they also, Microsoft claim, this one's a little softer. They also claim that Google prevents advertisers from easily moving off of their ad platform so that they could switch to another ad platform if they decided to do that. And that was one of the ones where I saw a general statement from Google just saying that's complete baloney. We do allow that, and it's easier than they're making it sound. So we'll see. I guess we'll have to wait and see how that falls out.
I have to say that's one area where Google does not have a monopoly is in
advertising.
Yeah.
Although, Google, obviously, they bought DoubleClick, and there are things that are sort of related. Anything search-related sort of ultimately piles into ads, right? That the point of improving your search engine and making it such a valuable destination, or at least an interim, kind of a middleman destination, is you want to drive traffic and increase ad sales and so forth. There are antitrust-related things occurring in the U.S. right now around Google's attempts to do, book search, right, which was just the settlement that they had with publishers was just shot down by a federal judge. And then Google, of course, is trying to buy ITA, which is that travel information provider.
Another one where they're having trouble, yeah.
Yeah, Microsoft and I think virtually every travel company on earth. There are a handful that don't, but most of them are saying that we don't want Google to own this company because you're funneling more and more traffic through Google.
And it was Microsoft and Amazon, by the way, in the book search deal that wanted to torpedo that as well.
Yeah. Well, the problem is, the book search deal, which a small percentage essentially of publishers and authors agree that this was a good idea. They don't represent the entire body of authors and publishers that are out there.
Yeah, but let's be honest. This isn't really about, the dispute is over orphan works that no one claims
no, of course.
copyright to. But Microsoft and Amazon care about the orphan works. It has nothing to do with it. They want to be in this business.
No, they don't. But actually, I still feel that their concern there is justified because the way the deal was structured, it essentially gave Google a monopoly on that content.
Right.
So yes, Google would go to the work of scanning all these books that nobody seems to want, but then Google is also improving the ability of its search engine to provide relevant results in a way that other competitors simply can't match. So this kind of falls into this internet search category from this complaint in the EU as well, when you think about it that way. Microsoft doesn't care about out-of-print books, obviously, but what they care about is a competitor kind of voraciously going after, what is essentially a small side chunk of the market or whatever, but something that is just one of many pieces that makes not just makes Google's product better and makes their competitors' products less good as a result, but does so in a way that prevents their competitors from even doing the same thing. Not that Microsoft wants to do this global book scanning project or whatever, but
they actually started doing it and they abandoned it. They had that.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things that seem like a good idea on the surface that Microsoft or others would abandon, and we'll get to some of the Amazon cloud storage stuff. But that's another good example. Microsoft has the SkyDrive service, which offers 25 gigabytes of free storage to people.
More than Amazon.
Sounds great on the surface, but what it doesn't do is provide you any easy way, certainly, to access that storage. You can't back up to it from Explorer and Windows, which seems like a fairly obvious bit of functionality. If you're really into having cloud storage and trust Microsoft, you can't buy additional storage, which I think would be a neat feature. But when you talk to Microsoft about this, they have no intention of getting into that business because there's just no money to be made there. Can you imagine, it's one thing to be any of these small cloud service companies that aren't affiliated with a huge company, cloud backup and all these different services that are out there. But when you're Microsoft and you offer it, this is a company that has 1.2 billion customers, right? It's a different thing altogether. How much storage would this company have to buy and then service and then all the complaints they would get and this thing would get lost? And it's to a consumer and to me, it sounds like an obvious feature that Microsoft should offer. But from Microsoft's standpoint, this is like a sinkhole from which they will never escape, and I think that's the rationale for not. So the book scanning thing maybe was that type of thing where they didn't realize what a, Sisyphean task this was. And then once you start looking into it, you realize, oh, no. We could spend our lives doing this and never complete it. And to what end?
Yeah, but then sue Google because they're doing it.
Absolutely. So,
of course.
And I say that in just the purest, competitive point of view. Yeah, of course, that's their right. Sure, certainly. If Google is doing it in such a way that they're not sharing the information or whatever, there's a case to be made. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But the third piece of this Microsoft antitrust complaint is smartphones. And again, I haven't read the complete complaint, so maybe there is some stuff in there about Android or whatever, but it's really not about that, oddly enough. It is about Google allegedly withholding technical information that Microsoft needed to make a viable YouTube client for Windows Phone.
Oh, that's interesting.
And their argument is, before Google had their own mobile OS, they did this for Apple with the iPhone. And at that time, Google's CEO, Eric Schmidt, had a pretty close relationship with that company in that he was on their board.
Right.
The FTC actually launched an informal investigation upon which time he quit the board. And of course, by that time anyway, Apple and Google were competing with smartphones. So Google now has this Android OS. And of course, on Android OS, you have an awesome YouTube client. And their point is, you did it for Apple and you did it for yourself, and now you're preventing us from doing it as well. Now, on that note, I already had a pick for this week for the Windows Phone app, but somebody pointed out an excellent Windows Phone app. There's a third-party YouTube app available for Windows Phone. It's called YouTube. So basically, you search for that app, not the Microsoft one, but the other one, right? And I've just looked at it quickly, but I have to say, it's pretty awesome. You know, I loaded up one of our podcasts just to see how the thing worked, and it's beautiful. So I'm not saying this refutes Microsoft's claim. Again, I need to read more about it and see exactly what they're talking about. What are the features, you know, or the bits of functionality that they can't get? But Microsoft has a pretty bare bones YouTube client that is essentially the web browser. And then this third party created a beautiful YouTube client that, frankly, again, I haven't compared it feature by feature, but it looks pretty full featured and it's beautiful. It's certainly beautiful looking. It seems to work really well. So
must be HTML5, right? Because there's no Windows, no Flash on Windows Phone 7.
Yeah, there's no Flash, but it supports H.264 and
right. That's cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
So,
nice. So you have a different one, by the way, later on. So just so you know, he still has a Windows Phone 7 tip. It's just a different one.
I do. Yeah, I have a separate one, but maybe I'll use this as a pick later, next week or 2 weeks.
Yeah, when people have forgotten it, you can do it. You can bring it back.
When people forget, yeah. Well, when I've had a chance to really look at it, but so far it looks good.
Okay.
Anywho, those are the 3 areas of the complaint. So they've published an open letter to customers. I'm looking forward to seeing the actual complaint, and then of course I'm looking forward to seeing how Google responds. And it's just going to be a crazy amount of stuff. I mean, I almost can't wait. It's like
it's going to go nuclear.
Here it comes. I love this kind of stuff. Even small fights. Microsoft is trying to prevent Apple from getting this App Store thing, right?
Yeah.
Every time one of these companies makes a filing, it's like you just want to turn off all the email, get a bowl of cereal, and be like, all right, what do we got?
It's like big time wrestling.
Yeah, you just highlight the good parts like it's a dirty book and you're a teenager, or you know what I mean? Like, because the language is classic. I love watching these companies just go at it.
Yeah.
And I should correct something I said earlier, because I would never eat a bowl of cereal that's really high in carbs. I don't know why I said that, but so I apologize for that.
Never would happen.
Yeah.
How's that? Before we go to a break, how's that diet going?
Right. It's going great. I mean, I haven't checked since I check once a week usually.
Yeah, I try not to weigh myself, but I'm discouraged because I've kind of plateaued.
Yeah, it will happen. So I have actually lost 22 pounds so far.
Wow, you look good.
And well, I don't know. I don't know if I feel. I mean, I bought like slightly smaller pants. That was kind of nice. I don't know.
We're gonna go out of the little girl's room right now and go to a commercial, and then we'll come back. I like your hair too. It's great. I don't know what you're doing. I just love it. Yeah. Let's talk about something.
It's called shampoo, by the way.
Really? Because I've been using soap.
It works. But
let's talk about something very, very manly, very macho, whether you're a woman or a man. It's very muy macho to be the geek, the alpha geek that people come to and say, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. And I think anybody who listens to the show probably is, their family and friends sysadmin. Some of you do it professionally. You're doing support for software. You're an IT person. This is a tool that goes in my toolkit and should be in yours as well. It's called GoToAssist Express. You know about this, right? I've told you about it. It's from Citrix, of course, so it's got the great back end, remote access stuff. 128-bit SSL, NAT traversal, so you never have to configure, a firewall or do port forwarding. But it also has some features just for the support professional. Things like 8 sessions at once, so you could start a scan on one and install on another and keep moving. We support professionals. We got to be light on our feet. Got to move here, got to move there, where you need it. And this helps you do that. You can also do unattended support. You don't have to sit around waiting for your client to show up. You just fix the computer. They come in, they go, wow, it works. They also have built-in assay of what software is running. So you know what operating system down to the point number, down to the service pack number, but also any security software, anything else running in the background. That helps you a lot. They've got support for you 24/7. I can go on and on, but the best thing to do is try this free for 30 days. Normally it's a month-to-month subscription. They do have a day pass for people who do this only occasionally. For the support ninja. But if you're an alpha geek, go to gotoassist.com/Windows right now. Try it free for 30 days. GOTOassist.com/Windows. And try it out, because I think this thing is couldn't live without it. Mac, PC, cross-platform, everything. It just makes it so easy to help people with their systems. GoToAssist.com/Windows, and we thank them for their support. And by the way, a fat guy in our chat room says, "What if you're only a beta geek?" Hey, this is how betas become alphas. GoToAssist.com/Windows.
It's like that Fraggle Rock thing. How does a bill become a law, or whatever that was?
Yeah. I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill. Doobie-doobie. So, I almost hesitate to bring this up.
Yep. I think I'm going to surprise you. But please, bring it on.
What's going on with the Windows Phone 7 updates?
I've got good news, Leo.
What?
What's the matter? You have a stroke?
I'm dying. Yes. Yes, my left side is just, no, I'm dodging in case some, fiery flames come spewing from your gullet there.
No,
I know this is a hot button topic for you.
No.
You're happy?
Let me tell you something about these jerks. No, it's no, actually, there's been some progress. I mean, it's Windows Phone, so it's slow, but it's happening.
It's happening. Clardy, or maybe it's C. Lardy, in our chat room says his Focus got updated just now.
Well, I don't know. Well, where's this guy from? If he has a Focus, his Focus didn't get updated if he lives in the United States. I can tell you that. But
maybe he's in Canada.
other words, in a sense, it didn't get updated. He worked around.
Canada's doing updates.
Canada, yes.
He might be in Canada.
Internationally, I would say we're in pretty good shape, unless you live in Australia, in the sense that updates are occurring.
Canada, that's practically the 51st state.
I was going to say, is Canada technically? Yeah. So actually, Canada's doing great. Canada, the updates are being delivered.
Yes.
So if you have a Focus in Canada, yes.
So maybe if I just go to Vancouver and I get it updated and I come back home.
No,
I did that for flu shots.
Yeah, it doesn't really work that way. So there's a carrier string inside your phone that determines, is one of the many checks that occurs to determine whether you get either one of the updates or whatever. Yeah. So that actually, the international picture has gotten significantly better. So, Microsoft put up those charts, which are so horrible. And now they've actually updated them, and things are happening, especially internationally. So that's kind of interesting. In the U.S., it's not quite as good, but AT&T, which was sort of in a weird holding pattern, is now listed as, or maybe upgraded to testing, right, which is still stage 1, but testing with the idea that they will complete testing in early April, and then presumably sometime in April, people in the U.S. on AT&T will start getting these updates. I guess we'll see. But if you have a T-Mobile phone, which I think is a Dell Venue Pro and the HTC HD7, if I'm not mistaken, those are being delivered now, so those guys are getting it. And then if you are on Sprint and you have the HTC Arrive, of course, that one came with Nodo built in. So there are all these workarounds available online. Ways
well,
that
you have one on your site, right?
Yeah, I did not invent this or even thoroughly document it. I essentially linked to a site that did do that because I tried many different ways to get this thing installed on my Focus, and the only one that worked was the one that I discussed and the one that I've tried. There's a more recent, simpler one that's supposed to work all the time, but the truth is the simpler one only works if you are in that category where the update is being delivered to your phone in your area, but for some reason you don't see it in Zune, which is, because it's like a staged rollout of some kind. So there's a simpler workaround if you fall into that narrow category. But if you have a Samsung Focus and you're from the United States and you got it from AT&T, there is no simple way to get it. You have to do a pretty thorough workaround, which involves, using the developer tools to unlock the phone. These can be the official developer tools or the Chevron WP7 tool that Raphael made. You have to load a ZAP file onto the phone, which is a registry editor. You have to change that AT&T designation in the phone to something else, so it appears that you're not an AT&T guy. And then you actually have to use a VPN to log into a server in this case, Hungary for some reason. And there's all kinds of crazy stuff. And it gets weirder from there, believe it or not, because there's a timing issue where you have to turn off, internet access at a certain time to fool the server into doing something. And it's crazy.
You mean in the middle of the update?
Yeah, in the middle of looking for the update. It's a very strange process. It's not, you can't listen to me describing it and do it. You have to go read the
Did you
the
make
article.
a YouTube movie so that people can get the
No,
timing?
no, I
just
didn't. No,
right?
because unfortunately, I have a Samsung Focus, so I
Right.
have one other AT&T phone. But once you do it, you're done. You can't. There's no way to undo it. So it's not something I can very well document. So what I've done is I described how it worked for me, and the instructions that I used. It did work, and in my case, it worked on the first try, which was great. Although I've talked to some friends, and it doesn't always work that quickly for them, or there's different timings involved, and it's a very strange thing. I mean. It's so silly, the hoops we have to jump through. But, I think I speak on behalf of many enthusiasts when I say I'm absolutely willing to jump through hoops to make this thing happen if Microsoft can't do it. Yes. So I updated, first you get the February update, and then you get the March update, and then you're up to date. And, of course, you get to see what the changes are, and they're not that exciting. But
I was going to say, can you tell that you?
Yes, you get well, not obviously. I should say you get copy and paste functionality in some places. It's not a very thorough implementation, but it works in text boxes, and that's pretty nice. There's some application performance improvements, especially I would say around returning to an app. So maybe you're playing a game and the phone rings, or you're playing a game and you want to go check your email, and then you want to go back to the game. Mm-hmm. That process of restart, it's not really restarting, but it's almost like
resuming.
It comes out of sleep, resuming. Yeah, is faster. It is notably faster. I would say day-to-day performance using the phone isn't noticeably faster per se, but then it wasn't particularly slow before anyway, so it's okay. And the search thing was fixed, and that's actually pretty noticeable. You have to really think about it for a second to understand why, how it would work differently. But if you're, for example, you want to go find that YouTube app that I mentioned, if you just go into the marketplace and hit the search button and type YouTube, the results that are going to come back are going to be music. Well, not podcasts. Music. What are they going to be? Music, videos, whatever
Lots
the
of
content
stuff.
types are. Lots of stuff. But if you go into the marketplace and then choose apps or games to get into that section of the marketplace and then choose search, the search will only search apps and games.
Didn't used to do that. That's nice. It
didn't used to do that.
That bugs me, I have to admit.
Yeah. Now, I haven't had it long enough to see if it fixes some of the stability and reliability problems I've seen with Windows Phone. For example, one of the weird issues in the initial version of the OS is that sometimes, and there's no real understanding of why, you'll click on the Marketplace button or the tile. The Marketplace will start to load, and then it kind of crashes back to the home screen. And so you try it again, and it will never work. And the only thing that you can do to fix it, literally, is to turn the phone off and then turn it back on, and then it works. So I haven't seen that yet under the new update, but I've only used it for a day or two. So
those of us who use Android call that a forced close. We get that a lot.
Yes, you can put lipstick on it all you want, Leo. It's
FC. Sometimes they just call it an FC.
Yeah. So it's happening. It's coming together. Yeah. So I don't really have anything bad to say.
Okay, good man.
For a change.
It is, now, this is an interesting prediction here. Is this from you? Who predicted that the Windows Phone 7...
This is from me.
Yeah,
I was drinking heavily over the weekend and decided to write an analyst
IDC says Windows Phone 7 will be the #1 smartphone. Can this be next year, or did I misread?
I'm sorry, did I write #1? #2.
No, number 2.
Yes.
After iPhone.
After iPhone.
But ahead of Android and BlackBerry.
Ahead of iPhone and BlackBerry, yeah.
Android, yeah. Wow. Oh, Android will be #1, and then Windows Phone 7, and then iPhone.
Yep.
That's somewhat counterintuitive.
Right. It kind of reads like a Jerry Pournelle novel, but...
It's an alternative universe.
Yeah, I had to check. It's not April 1st yet, so that's not it. Like, why would they write this? This is crazy, And the reason is pretty simple. They feel that Nokia is going to put Windows Phone over the top.
Actually, that makes sense.
It makes sense until, it was, I have to give credit where it's due here. It was Matt Rossoff. He used to be from Directions on Microsoft, which is an analyst firm, but now he is writing for Business Insider. And he wrote something that I just thought was so smart, which is, really looking at what were these guys really saying? Like, how could they have determined this? And what they basically determined was that the entire market is going to change, except for Symbian, except for, I should say, Nokia's market share. and that everyone who uses Symbian is just going to move to Windows Phone.
It'll be automatic.
It's a very unsophisticated way to look at this.
So they're just basically saying every phone that Nokia sold before is going to be Windows Phone 7, and that's magic.
And I see the way I look at it. Now, of course, I don't live outside of the United States. I mean,
I think it's misunderstanding why Nokia sells so many phones, because they're feature phones. They're simple, inexpensive phones.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I've absolutely made this claim about the Symbian stuff, that they don't even deserve to be included in any discussion about smartphones because they're just not smart enough. But I don't live in Poland or Spain or France or whatever. I don't live in places where people have a very serious attachment to Nokia. So maybe I just don't understand it. But it seems to me that Nokia is going to be losing people. That there's no doubt about it. That I'm not saying that Windows Phone won't save the company or whatever. I'd like to think that it will do well enough for them that they'll have some kind of a rebound. But how could it's impossible to believe that they're ever going to just simply move their massive usage share right over to Windows Phone.
It's not going to be a one-to-one. People use Nokia phone. I mean, if you look around in those in other countries, they're not, for the most part, smartphones. They're not E71s or N8s. They're candy bar phones.
Right. And then literally in the past month or two, I've been to Spain and to France and was astonished by the sheer number of these kind of flip phones and feature phones and non-iPhones, basically. I mean, it was kind of amazing how much of that stuff is out there in the world. Of course, this is probably true in the U.S. too.
It's more affordable, and there's no data plan. You're not going to get people who are using phones like that to move to a smartphone with a data plan overnight. It's much more expensive.
Yeah. So, if we were to go back in time to last summer, maybe like last August or something, and you would ask me, how do you think Windows Phone is going to do? Where would Windows Phone ever fall in the market? What is the best case scenario? I would have said the best case scenario, and this is possibly unobtainable, is that they would be the number 3 or 4 player in the market. That's absolute best case. Number 1 and 2, of course, being Android and iPhone. That there is no doubt that there's Android and there's iPhone, and then there's everyone else, and that Microsoft's hope is that they can somehow outclass the rest. And that one of the big questions is, I do feel that the smartphone market, is big enough to include 3, maybe 4 major players, right? And then after that, it gets filtered down to the noise. And Microsoft needs to be one of those 3 or 4. So they need to be 3rd or 4th place. And if they're not, then it's over, right? Who that other player will be, we'll see. It could be RIM with BlackBerry.
So you're saying they have to beat RIM or Palm Pre?
Not just that. So in other words, they have to beat. Yes, they do have to beat RIM, and they do have to beat the HP Palm Pre stuff.
Which I know are pretty bad down at that 4 and 5 spot.
But there's another part to it. They don't just have to beat those guys. They do have to beat those guys. But the other half of it is, the market has to be able to sustain this other thing as a 3rd major player. In other words, if Android has 40% of the market and Apple has 30% of the market, the remaining, Microsoft can't have 10%, or maybe they could, I don't know. But, once you get into the single-digit percentage, it's like, what's the point of this again? It just becomes pointless. You become like Opera in the desktop web browser market, or, there's a lot, or Lotus, Symphony or something in the desktop public, productivity market.
So you're saying they're, instead of Oprah, they're Opera.
Well, we'll see. I mean, anyway, that was my best case, we win scenario. Now, and this was last summer. So now that Nokia is on board, I guess there are more questions, because I don't believe that it's a definite that these guys are going to be a positive. I mean, they could drag Windows Phone down too. I mean, aren't they? They're falling through the floor right now by their own admission.
Yeah, this is clearly something that Nokia needed, not more than Microsoft. Although Microsoft paid them quite a bit of money.
Well, ultimately, hopefully, it benefits both, right? Yeah. I mean, it should be a win-win. But I'm just saying.
But if you look at Nokia's Symbian, I bought an N8 not so long ago, hoping, because I love Symbian, hoping that it would be competitive. It's not. It feels 2 years old already. I mean, it's brand new. 2 years. Feels like feels like that's not even close.
It's like a smart car. It sounds like a good idea until you actually get it.
Yeah.
Then you realize, wait, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a broom closet that's bigger than this thing, and it gets better gas mileage, by the way.
That's the irony.
Yeah, it is. It's very strange.
So, somebody smart in our chat room suggested maybe this is why Microsoft is working so hard to make sure that the European Windows Phone 7 people are updated.
That's okay. Sure. I mean, right. I have no explanation for why the European market's moving faster. I guess other than the fact I'd point out it's not Microsoft doing it, it's the European carriers doing it. So,
right.
Microsoft has released these updates. So it's not like Microsoft has any say over when these updates go out. It's the carriers. So I think what we're really seeing is that the carriers in Europe are just more aggressive, and that the carriers in the United States, AT&T, jerks, are not.
Not so aggressive.
Not so aggressive. not so non-evil. Maybe.
Hey, Craig Mundy is in Australia right now. He just spoke to the Committee for Economic Development of Australia, and is being quoted by the Sydney Morning Herald as saying, those tablets, I don't think they're here to stay.
Yeah. People said that about the PC as well. What is here to stay is that little Wally-looking thing that you attach to your Xbox. Like, that's going to be the future.
That's the future.
That's the future computing right there.
Craig, he says, well, he might be right. He says it's not clear whether the iPad will remain with us or not.
Yeah. The only question is whether the iPad will replace the PC or not.
Yeah.
I think that if you were to say, here's an iPad and here's the Kinect, which one of these do you think is a fad? I would say, in my house, I can already tell you that the Kinect is already a fad.
Yeah.
Nobody uses it. I think that's the only way to say it. And I think that's true of a lot of homes. I made this, I don't want to call it a complaint. I made this observation about the Wii when it first came out. The Wii would win every quarter. Yeah. Every month, it was the best-selling console. And people would say, and I'd say, yeah, but nobody uses the damn thing. I mean, you buy it, and then it becomes a $129 doorstop. But I really feel like the Kinect's the same thing. Don't take that the wrong way. I don't mean it's not good technology. Absolutely, it's an impressive improvement over the stuff that Nintendo pioneered with the Wii. There's no doubt about it. And I think there are some interesting concepts in there that can move forward to these kind of Minority Report type futures that we all envision. But the Kinect itself as a device, there's no future there. This device has to be replaced for this stuff to become interesting. And I just don't. I'm sorry, you don't have to spend too much time out in the world to see people with iPads everywhere.
Everywhere. And
I can assure you, there may be a certain number of Kinects in people's homes, but most of them are not being used. There's no doubt about it.
Craig is, incidentally, for those who don't know, Microsoft's Global Chief Research and Strategy Officer. He also said, I don't know what he was smoking. He said, I believe the successor to the desktop.
Yes. Wait for it.
Is the room.
Yes. Well, because you know why? Microsoft makes the thing that sits in the room with you. It's called a Kinect.
Instead of thinking the computer is something on the desk that you go and sit in front of, the future is basically the whole room is the computer and you go in it. That's good because we for a while computers were as big as rooms. Then we got them real small and light, and now they're going to be rooms again. So I think that's great.
I mean, he's being simple here, but I think there's a future to the notion of every wall is a display. That kind of thing. Yeah, I think we're
a Ray Bradbury future.
No, but you
hit the nail on the head because then he started talking about Kinect. That's key to that, of course. It's something that recognizes you when you come into the room.
Yeah, unless you're in a dark room or less than 6 feet away from it, or the litany of little problems with this very simple version of the technology he's describing is, it's a 1.0 product. I get it, but.
I'm excited about the Kinect now that we understand the sophisticated way that they got it to recognize body movements. It's pretty amazing. I mean, it really is artificial intelligence here.
I don't know.
I mean, for gaming, maybe not. But I think
look, we'll see.
When it comes to Farmville, there's not going to be a better way to farm.
What you need is Farmville on the Nintendo 3DS, so you can do that little guy in 3D.
Ooh.
You know what I'm saying?
Now
the buildings would actually stick up out of the ground.
Ooh. I could actually walk amongst my people.
Yes, as a god.
As a god, as a living,
I think it's what we're all looking for.
Breathing god. I can make it rain. I can turn the Gray sky to blue.
Of course.
I can't get next to you. So
who's that from? Why do I know the words to that song? What is that?
You do, though. I was impressed. It's the Temptations.
Okay.
That's why.
I know the words, but I don't even know what the song is. You know?
Okay. Who said this? We're going to play a game. Actually, we're gonna tease everybody because I'm gonna say who said this, then I'm gonna do a little take a little commercial break for Squarespace. But who said this? All of Microsoft's best early ideas are mine, not Bill's. I don't get enough credit for my early work and for Microsoft's initial successes. In fact, I left Microsoft because I couldn't take Bill. Who said that? We will tell you. I think you know, actually. I know you know.
I know, yeah.
In fact, I'm jealous because you got a copy of this book before anybody else did. I can't wait to read it.
No, I don't have this book.
Oh, how do you know?
There's an excerpt.
Oh, you read an excerpt. Yeah, I want this book.
Vanity Fair.
Vanity Fair. Oh, you got the magazine. My wife has my Vanity Fair. She'll bring it back someday. Let me talk about Squarespace.com. The secret, by the way, no, the answer, Von Dutch, is not Microsoft Bob. Just, I'll just limit. We'll take that one.
That little dog.
Squarespace is the secret behind exceptional websites. If you're ready to make a website, or if you have a website you'd like to move somewhere easier, more secure, perhaps you know friends and family or kids who don't have websites and you want to help them get started. Squarespace is easy enough for a kid to use, but pro enough for some of the biggest companies in the world to use. It really is an amazing solution. It's hosting and software. They go together hand in hand. In fact, the reason Squarespace can do such a great job is because of how tightly integrated their content management software is to their server system. Means you've just got this always-on presence on the internet. You can import your stuff from your existing site. Movable Type, WordPress, TypePad, and Blogger APIs are all supported. They have a really nice importing engine. Export out, too, so you're never trapped. You can use an iPhone or an iPad to post, to moderate, to even to get stats. And boy, do they have great stat packages. You can really find out who's visiting, what they're doing. You can take total control of the site. And the nice thing is you don't have to be a developer to do any of this. Squarespace just makes it easy. You could try it free for 2 weeks. You get the full set of tools if you just go to squarespace.com/windows and click the green bouton right on the front page there. It says try it free. And it takes a second to set up. You don't need a credit card or anything. Nope, you don't have to give them any personal information except your email address in case you forget your password. That's it. And they will not bug you with that, by the way. It'll only be used for account status notifications, to let you know your trial's running out, for instance. If you decide to keep it after your 2-week trial, $12 a month gives you hosting and software. The new Squarespace 6 is on the horizon. It's going to be an amazing upgrade, and it will happen automatically. You got to love them. Squarespace.com/windows. The secret behind exceptional websites. Go try it today. Set up a site. You'll see what I mean. So who was it said all those nasty things about Mr. Bill Gates?
Forgotten Microsoft co-founder, Paul Allen.
He's like the Pete Best of Microsoft.
I've lamented for many years now, actually, that there haven't been any good books written about these industry companies that I care about, especially Microsoft.
The early days, yeah.
Yeah, there were some books in the early days that were decent, and then, of course, in more recent years, actually not more recent years, but 10 years ago, there were a bunch of books written about Microsoft because of the antitrust trial and how dominant they had become, and some of those would be interesting to go back and read now in the wake of what's happened, in the past 10 years. But it's been a while. I mean, there really haven't been too many good books. So Paul Allen, who co-founded Microsoft with Bill Gates, has his autobiography coming out next month, April 17th. Called Idea Man, the memoir of the co-founder of Microsoft.
Dvorak always was of the opinion that Bill didn't really write that first BASIC, that Paul did all the work and Bill took all the credit. And this kind of implies, he does say that, that Bill was a programmer and was a good programmer.
Yes. Allen actually gives a lot of the credit to Gates for that. And certainly they both had a part in that. And given the limitations of the technology of the day, both of them have described this code in the same kind of painfully geeky way, really tight coding and, the best piece of work they've ever done and all this kind of stuff. And they basically took a version of BASIC and made it run on the MIT's Altair without having the hardware in front of them, which is pretty incredible.
They wrote an emulator first, yeah.
Yeah, and Alan describes in detail a story I think we've all kind of heard about, which was basically that he was the one who flew out to Albuquerque and met with the inventor of the Altair. What was that guy's name?
Dr. Bob Roberts.
Rob Roberts. And he, they loaded it onto the Altair, and not knowing whether it was going to work, started doing some simple things. They did some simple math, but they actually typed in, I think it was a 35 or 55 line basic program that was like a lunar lander thing, and it worked like on the first try.
It's such an amazing story.
It is an amazing feat, for the day, obviously. Incredible. So, and this changed the PC industry immediately. This guy immediately recognized what a big deal this was and wanted to go into business with them and all that kind of stuff. So Microsoft was born out of this, and Gates dropped out of school, and history was made. But, the types of obviously the types of things that are going to be a big deal in this book are any of the criticisms or the negative stories he might have about people he worked with. And there's some stuff about Gates which is very Steve Jobs-esque, I guess, in the sense that Gates immediately right up front demanded 60% of this new company to Allen's 40%, because he felt like he did more work in this initial basic stuff especially, and Paul Allen agreed that was the case, and agreed to it. Gates spent a lot of the rest of the time that Allen was at Microsoft trying to get an even bigger percentage. He schemed behind his back to take more. The guy was out with a Hodgkin's thing, and Bill Gates was
lymphoma. He was potentially dying.
And Gates was complaining that he wasn't working enough.
Yeah.
And wanted to take some of his share away, and was scheming with current CEO Steve Ballmer to make that happen. And, he's still, and even given all this stuff, not that Allen is one of the richest men on earth, but he comes off a bit like Steve Wozniak does in the Apple story. Although, I'd stress
is more genial about the whole thing.
Well, that's what I mean. But he does come off that way, because he says, look, this guy was a bad guy and he did the wrong thing, but he's like, he was right. He did this and that. And he did ultimately agree to these cuts in his percentage, On the other hand, not quite as genial or congenial as Wozniak, in the sense that he also called Bill on a couple things. And he was one of the few guys on earth, and thankfully at Microsoft, who could call Bill on BS. That he was smart enough to counter Bill Gates. And this is something I think Gates has lacked, frankly. Well, not that he's running the company anymore, but I think, after Paul Allen left, I don't think there was really anyone left. Maybe Nathan Myhrvold, although I think Myhrvold spent a lot of his career just basically backing up what Gates wanted to do anyway. So I don't really think he had that guy pushing back, which I think is so necessary in this kind of relationship or in this kind of company leadership. So, Paul Allen eventually left. Of course, he went on to great success elsewhere, owns sports franchises and has had some successful and some unsuccessful business ventures, but is an incredibly rich person,
Including Tech TV, I might add.
Okay. So I saw one sort of sour grapes thing about this, where someone said, it's kind of tough to see a guy who became such a rich billionaire, whine about getting a slightly smaller percentage. It's like, guys, seriously. I mean, the guy absolutely got screwed out of some stuff. And, it doesn't matter that him and Gates were, are and were forever some of the world's richest men. I mean, this is just a fact, and it shouldn't surprise people too. And especially as we've discussed this, I told you my Larry Bird story, my premise that, people who are really, really good at one thing are obviously lacking in other areas. That Gates would be a manipulative, driven, competitive jerk. Is that really? I mean, seriously, like, are we going to be outraged by this? Of course he is. I mean, how else would Microsoft have gotten to where it was?
You need that guy.
Exactly, you need
that guy.
Yeah, just like Steve Jobs at Apple. No one's ever going to. No one ever called him a sweetheart, and no one ever will.
If anybody out there is an extraordinarily competitive, jerky person who would like to come work at TWiT, we need that guy.
Okay.
No, that's my job. I can't wait till the books are written. About me.
Oh, the book about you. Okay.
Yeah, what they say. Where Tom Merritt goes, I invented all that stuff.
Jerk.
Jerk. Leo never let me have a chance. Jerk.
Right.
I can't wait to read the book. But I have to say, Paul Allen never impressed me. To be honest, never impressed me with his his lightning-like intellect.
That's interesting. So
yeah.
I would just say he never impressed me from more of a business standpoint.
Neither.
This was a guy who had lots of money and was willing to throw it at anything.
Yeah,
I would say Bill Gates was probably very technical, and no doubt still is. But I honestly think that his biggest benefit to Microsoft wasn't the technical stuff; it was the business acumen.
Yeah. There's a book about Paul Allen called "Accidental Billionaire."
Yes,
that will give you an idea of what people sometimes think of Paul.
Okay.
He was.
I don't know him. I don't.
I only know him peripherally, and I can't really judge his technical expertise. I'm sure he.
Well, no, but I would say this: he was there, and that's why this is going to be compelling, no matter what.
Oh, I can't wait to read it. He was
there. There's no doubt about it.
Windows 8 is great. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say anything when you're drinking. So we're getting some builds now. What is an M2 level build? What does that mean? It
means milestone 2. Before you hit beta, there's a number of milestones. Typically 3, actually.
Are we seeing M3?
No, but we're in the we're in that period. So M2 has happened, and now we're working toward M3, which people are saying probably this summer, and then followed by that first beta, which will probably be a private beta, if history is any indication, sometime around PDC in the fall, September, October, whenever that is, and then a public beta like we did with Windows 7, I'm guessing by the end of the year, and then the process continues, and then about a year, 15 months from today, they'll complete it, and Windows 8 comes out. But ever since Steven Sinofsky took over the Windows division at Microsoft, there's been an Apple-like veil of secrecy, and I've always wondered, a company like Microsoft, obviously a technology company, they have all this rights management stuff and the ability to hide data and encrypt data, why they never did a better job of keeping information from the public. Well, unfortunately for guys like me, they're doing it now. So it's gotten very difficult. And they're serious about protecting this information in other ways that are actually potentially scary. So for example, if you're an employee, Windows is componentized. So there are different types of builds that go out in different parts of the company, and they work on different parts of it at different times separately from the rest of it. So just to make up a scenario, let's say you're working on the next generation media player stuff, whatever that is, and your build of Windows 8 would look like Windows 7. It would have a couple of peripheral things that were new because, there is some general stuff in Windows 8 that's new, but you would basically be working just on that one piece and wouldn't have the other stuff around. So if your build leaked out and it had all that Windows media player stuff or whatever they're calling it, they would know where it came from. They could really narrow it down. And the way things are now, there's a pretty good chance that when a build leaks, they'll actually be able to trace this thing back to the guy that leaked it, and that guy could lose his job. And they're very serious about this. And from my perspective, they're also serious about it from a different standpoint, which is, they don't want you to discuss this stuff. They don't want you to, publish information that they consider to be, intellectual property or, the private information of this company and so forth. And there are potential threats there. No one has ever threatened me directly along these lines yet, but, we're working on a book. And I have a career, and I have to write about this stuff. And if they took me off of some program where I could no longer get access to a beta or be part of the reviewer's workshop or whatever it was, that would seriously impede my ability to earn a living. And that's a scary proposition because you get the feeling with these guys that they're actually kind of serious about that stuff. And it casts this whole thing in a different light. So it's a little nerve-wracking. Raphael and I have been talking for a long time about the new book and the direction we're going to take, and we don't want it to be based on the previous books. We want this to be a new book, hopefully a much smaller book, something that's more easily digestible and really just focuses on the stuff that's brand new.
I'm just glad to know that you're going to write another one.
Yeah, well, Windows is big enough. I think it's important enough to do that.
I agree. It's the book for Windows.
Yeah, there's all this stuff, as I get older, I think when I was a younger guy, I was more concerned with the stuff. I look at the kids now and, they get so excited about all this stuff. And I don't really care about breaking little tidbits of information or doing this or this exclusive thing. I'm more interested in documenting how things work, and being accurate about what's going on, what are the changes, and I think of it as documentation. It's almost like communicating something that Microsoft has always done a very bad job of communicating. that my interests are still very much in technology and all that stuff, but it's more of a documentation kind of thing at this point. And when I look at Windows 8, we Raphael and I have actually been sitting on a lot of information. The problem is it's starting to leak out, because people can't help themselves. They get very excited. There's some stuff that we've seen that could have gotten people in trouble. And what I'm afraid of is as things leak out, we may never hear about it. We may, I don't know. But I think people at Microsoft are going to start getting in trouble, for example. And I think it's going to cause a worsening of this situation, if you will. So hopefully what happens is time just passes and maybe we have a couple of small leaks and then we can get going with the beta. And of course, we'll be able to discuss that stuff. And that's, I'm just looking forward to that, because in the old days, you would find out about the next version of Windows very early on, and then some of the stuff wouldn't happen. And the way things work now is they don't want to reveal anything until they're ready, and that pretty much what they show you and tell you about, what you can discuss publicly, is what happens in the product, and that's the way they did Windows 7, and it's the way they're going to do Windows 8. But we're in kind of a weird, because of the timing, it's kind of a weird point, so pre-beta, we're starting to see these leaks. There's a lot of misinformation out there around Metro UIs and blah, 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 blah. But, it's Windows 8 has a big mission to accomplish here, because Windows 7 was such a huge success. How do you follow that up? It's kind of a tough thing. The last time they had to do this, they came out with Vista. Now, I don't think Windows 8 is going to be a Vista, but, even if Windows 8 is awesome, you're never going to be as successful as Windows 7, because Windows 7 just works. It's really good. So it's an interesting position, and I think these are the right guys to make it happen. Sinofsky is many things, but he runs a tight ship, and he's got a very nice engineering style about him, and kind of a very logical and cold way of looking at things that I think is the right approach, for something as important as Windows. So I guess we'll see. But, it's every day now, it seems like there's a little bit that comes out about Windows 8, and it's like, oh boy, here we go.
So we talked a little bit about Cloud Player, but this Amazon announced this on Monday, and I think really, I guess Tuesday, really kind of interesting. You get
this is huge.
5 gigs for free for storing anything. Now you have to use the web interface, but I'd be very interested to see if at some point they make a web DAV or something simple set up. So
they have to.
They're going to.
If they don't, someone else will.
Yeah.
Someone else will.
So there's that, and then if you buy an Amazon MP3 album once a year, you get 20 gigs. And any music you buy on Amazon, and I presume they'll do this as well with video eventually. They do it kind of with the locker. It doesn't count against your storage requirements. So there's a huge incentive for people to leave iTunes and just start buying their MP3s on Amazon, where they're cheaper, and you've got permanent cloud storage. I'm writing a lengthy review of this stuff. I've uploaded my entire music collection to this service. Oh, you did? How many gigs was that?
It's 20 to 25, somewhere there.
So did you buy more space?
I did, yeah. I bought the 50 gig storage thing. I have some observations about this thing. I was hoping to get my review done before we went on today. I missed that, so I'll do it later today. I'll post it later today. But as far as the actual, I guess there's some very specific things about the service that I think we need to discuss. But then I also think it's important to step back and understand what's really happening here from a big picture standpoint. So I guess looking at Cloud Drive specifically, it's simple, right? They have their cloud storage. There are other people that have cloud storage, like the hard drive in the sky or whatever, the different terms.
And there's Dropbox, which everybody uses.
Windows Live SkyDrive. Even arguably something like Carbonite sort of falls into
it totally does. You bet.
Category, Yep. So there are companies that do this. It's very straightforward. It's a web interface. It works Windows, Mac, from a web interface. It works on Android, which, again, is very interesting, for the music bit of it. The thing that I think differentiates Amazon right now, and I really believe they have to change this, is you can sort of store anything you want there, but it's really focused on music right now. And the reason it's focused on music is they have a music uploader and synchronizer that will look at your music collection, all of the playlists that you have in iTunes and Windows Media Player, and you can choose what you want to put up there and sync, but it will do it automatically if you want. In my case, it took over 7 hours for that initial upload, for the 20 to 25 gig, whatever it was. But they have these tools for music. They have a player, They have a player that works on Android, which is their MP3. You know, the Amazon MP3 program has been updated, so now there's a player. It works great. The sound quality is great. So if you have 256K files, that's what you play. It doesn't detune them in any way. And if you're connected to the internet, it works like iTunes. I mean, it's your whole music collection, but it's not on your computer. Yeah. Now, obviously, if you're in a plane or in some disconnected
using an iPhone.
Or using an iPhone, but I think that's a temporary condition.
I agree.
There are some holes there. So there's some obvious stuff, but I have to say, in using this, there are some not so obvious problems with this that really, really, really need to be addressed. The first one is it's only for music. I mean, they can say whatever they want about you can put other files up there, but they offer no way to do that. There is a very simple web uploader, but it can only choose files. You can't point it at a directory structure of, say, photos and say, upload my entire photo collection. You can't do it. It will not upload folders. So that's useless. My pictures and my documents are not all, spewed out in a folder. They're all over the place. So right now, there's no good way to do that.
What you're saying is you have to select files individually. You can't.
Yeah, you can multi-select.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's just not. In other words, with music, you get this first-class experience. With everything else, it's very manual. Now, it just came out. I mean, I think they rushed it out, frankly, because, as we know, Apple and Google are working on similar things. So I think they were trying to make this happen quickly. Okay, so, that's fine. They'll get there. The other thing is it's really expensive. Google doesn't get a lot of credit for this because no one knows it exists, but Google has additional storage you can buy, tiered pricing, just like Amazon.
It's cheap.
The difference between Amazon and Google is that Google's storage is 1/4 the price.
Right. Amazon's $1 a gig, right? $1 a gig.
Yeah, these guys are. It's not exact, but because they have different tiers. But if you wanted to buy the biggest amount of storage you could get, a terabyte, on Google it's $256, $255. On Amazon it is $1,000.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Yeah.
So
I actually have 200 gigs on Google. I have 200 gigs on Google because I bought more.
Yeah.
Google.
Oh no, I do too. I have a crazy amount of storage. Now, the reason I have that much storage on Google is, and I think I pay $80 a year or $40 a year or something.
Yeah,
it's cheap. The reason I have it is because I use Google for photo storage.
Yeah, and I got it through Picasa.
Yeah. Right. So in the same way that both companies sort of offer this storage that could be used for anything, sort of, Amazon has very specifically gone after music. It's all optimized for music. And if that's what you're looking for, and you have an Android phone, especially today, it's fantastic. It works great. I really like it. If you want to do anything else with it, you have to wait because it's just useless right now. Likewise, on the Google side, if what you want it for is photo backup, essentially photo storage, even photo sharing, actually, Picasa is great, and it's cheap, and it works really well, and it's optimized for that. But if you wanted to put music into Google storage, you'd have to figure out some workaround because they don't have an interface for that. You'd have to get some third-party tool or something. There's just a different focus. So my expectation is that Google will come out with a Google Music. It will be very much like this. Apple may do something very much like this through MobileMe or whatever, these kind of digital locker programs. And I'm hoping at that point, Amazon, A, lowers prices, and B, also works to include other storage types, other uploader types or whatever, just to make it better.
It's funny. I forgot I had all this storage on Google.
Yeah.
It's shared between Gmail, Picasa Web, and Google Docs. So
right now,
you could put Docs on there, but it isn't very flexible in that
And it's not, by the way, it's almost impossible to find.
I forgot I had it.
Right, of course. So I have, let's see, I have, what do I pay for? I have
$50 for 200 gigs is what I have.
I have 200 gigs. That's what I have.
Too. $50 a year.
I'm only using, and the reason I have that much is I was originally paying for, I think, half that, but they keep raising the amount. So I don't really need that much, but they keep raising the size of it. It's crazy. So,
well, you can see I'm using 0 gigs of my 200 gigs. I have it. I just don't use it.
Yeah, exactly. So, my Gmail uses almost nothing.
Right.
Well, actually, that's not true. It uses over 5 gigabytes, but that's basically infinite anyway. It's no problem. My photo collection on Google is about 40 gigabytes. I just have a lot of space. There's a lot of space, and it's not that expensive. 200 gig is, let's see if I can bring this up, is $50 a year. Yeah.
Now, you can upload arbitrary files using Google Apps.
Okay.
But it's not
But they
a
make
great
it very,
interface.
in other words, you really have to know what you're doing.
You do.
To do. And by the way, let's say you did upload your entire music collection to Google. How would you play it? You know, you'd have to, some third party maybe would have to come out with some weird, you know.
No, Amazon distributes an Android app. Their MP3 app now is a player. So it just plays.
Right.
I put an album on there.
I have to say, on the Android phone, the sound quality is fantastic. It doesn't actually kill the battery life for too much, you know, over Wi-Fi. It was pretty good. I mean, it's pretty impressive. I mean, we've spent so much time in the PC industry as users escalating the size of these hard drives, you know, 2 terabyte, 3 terabyte, crazy sizes. And then we're getting to this point where, like, eventually, assuming the connectivity there is there, and obviously that's a big piece, you kind of don't, you know, we're getting to the point where you don't really need the storage. And it's funny because this new generation of devices that's coming, like the MacBook Airs and the SSD-based PC laptops, obviously have a lot less storage because it's so expensive to do solid state. Kind of, you know, it doesn't matter if you think of it if you look at it the right way. And you do things the right way, you know, it's pretty easy to work around. So the big picture thing I wanted to discuss with this is this. You know, we talk about this stuff a lot in the podcast. I write about this stuff a lot. When you think about platforms and ecosystems and all this stuff, you think about companies like Microsoft and Apple and Google and all the stuff that they're doing. But, you know, Amazon has very quickly and somewhat quietly, I have to say, established itself as a major ecosystem and platform that actually, and this is the fascinating bit, it kind of interconnects with those other platforms and ecosystems that Microsoft and Apple and Google make. This is the company, you know, they started out as a retailer of physical items that they would ship, and obviously they still do this, to people's homes using UPS and US Mail and so forth. So they sell books, but then they also bought Audible, and they made the Kindle, which is its own platform that works in all these devices. They sell video games in boxes and software in boxes, but now they also sell it digitally, and they store that stuff up in a locker, by the way, and very few people even know that exists. They're the biggest, or were the biggest retailer, one of the biggest retailers of CD-based music, and they have Amazon MP3, which now integrates really nicely with this news service. And, of course, MP3s work on everything. They're the biggest retailer of DVDs and Blu-ray movies, and they have Amazon On Demand, or what now they're calling instant video, where you do things, they integrate it with the other products they sell. So when you buy a Blu-ray movie, oftentimes you'll get free streaming access to that movie on Amazon Instant Video as well, as sort of a perk. So now they're taking on Netflix in that market. They're in the Android market with their App Store. And now they've got this thing. They're in cloud storage, and they've got the cloud music player and all this stuff. They have all this stuff. And if you have a Mac or a PC, it all works. If you have an iPhone, a lot of it works, and I think that's going to expand over time. They have apps that run on Windows Phone even, right? And obviously they're huge into Android because that's the big ecosystem where I think a third party like Amazon can make the most waves. You know, they can even displace Google as the supplier of your apps. And if you have an Android phone and you're not going to Amazon.com every day and just getting that free app,
I do.
You have to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, how you could not do that? I mean, I don't understand. But it's amazing when you look at the big picture of what by the way, everything I just described, that's not even everything, but those are the big ones. It's like they're a retailer. They're like Walmart. But look where they are now. You know, look what they've done here. It's incredible. I think this is, it's amazing how quietly this has happened, but I think what we're seeing here is the makings of a major new competitor to these high-tech companies that no one ever saw coming. And that in the same way that Microsoft, and books were written about this, who is the biggest competitor of Microsoft? It was Nintendo. Who was the biggest competitor, Microsoft a year ago? Apple and Google. Who is it going to be a couple of years from now? I think this is completely rewriting the rules of engagement for this kind of battle for the hearts and minds of consumers in this high-tech world that we live in. It's incredible. Cloud drive, cloud, player, whatever. I mean, these things taken by themselves are not necessarily huge advances, but they're part of this much bigger thing. It's incredible. Amazon's a big deal.
Yeah.
They really are.
And I think they're really they're taking on Apple big time on this one.
Taking on everyone. Think about the sheer. Leo, I'm gonna tell you about a company, a mythical company, that is taking on Apple in these markets. It's taking on Microsoft in these markets.
True.
It's taking on Google in these markets. It's taking on Netflix in these markets. And by the way, it's winning. You know, I mean, seriously, think about it. Who is this mythical company?
Right.
You know, like how could it exist?
Yeah.
And here it is.
It's truly amazing.
It is amazing.
And you know they're doing an Android tablet. That's pretty obvious. So,
right.
you know, the next Kindle will be an Android tablet. They're actually actively lobbying for developers to start. They're calling and writing iPhone developers saying, "Would you like to port your app to Kindle?" It's very interesting.
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, competition's good for us. That's all I can say. It's good for us. We want the competition. We don't want anyone to win.
No, listen, as a consumer, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened. Or there's weird tie-ins. You know, we talked about this before. You're an Amazon Prime customer, which I know you and I both are. There are benefits to that have to do with just buying stuff. But now there's a weird benefit where we also get their Netflix-like instant streaming service for free as well.
Yeah.
What the heck does that have to do with free shipping on, you know, free second-day shipping? Nothing. But this Amazon ecosystem has grown so big and so powerful that now that is a weird perk.
Yeah.
I mean, what the? It's something. It's one thing, and again, taking in isolation, it doesn't seem like a big deal. It's something that Apple can't do. It's something that Google can't do. It's something that Microsoft can't do. It's something Netflix can't do. It's amazing.
You got to admire their vision, their chutzpah, their drive. I mean,
yeah, because the notion that an online retailer would have online, you know, storage, both for consumers and businesses, right? You know, they also have Amazon Web Services and the S3 service. How could this company possibly be a major player in cloud computing? But they are.
Yeah,
and that's something we didn't even discuss. You know, it's crazy.
I want to kind of move along here.
I can see why. So very quickly,
lots to talk about, obviously. So.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, it's been such it's a crazy week. I brought up something in a column that I write about the consumerization of IT, and I asked readers, and now I'm going to ask listeners of the podcast as well. We've talked about the notion that I want to do these mobile picks that are on non-Microsoft platforms, but relate in some way to integrating within a Windows environment and so forth. From a business standpoint, if you're listening to this and you work in a company and perhaps in IT, I'm curious about your experiences with your company either rolling out or allowing users or workers to bring in their own devices and use them within the work environment. So,
I think that's the way it is now, isn't it?
But I want to know what it is that they're looking for. In other words, I think the very basic would be that Exchange Active Sync support. They might be looking for, you know, the ability to remotely wipe the device if it gets lost, so no work-related information gets out, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that the two approaches there are you just give up, which I think a lot of companies are doing, by the way, and you just say, screw it, bring in your own stuff, we don't care. Or there are the people, bigger companies probably, that want to manage things more, and I think there are scales of management. Microsoft has on-premises, and soon we'll have cloud-based management products that can manage devices as well as PCs.
I think most devices that hope to be in the business and the enterprise are doing something. I know iPhones do.
Yeah. So obviously the iPhone was so successful. The first year it had no enterprise features, but after that they went after that very strong. Now
that's probably what flipped it, because people demand. They said, "I don't want this BlackBerry. I want an iPhone."
The way I said it is, you know, I said this to Microsoft. I said, you know, you guys keep talking about the consumerization of IT. That's not what it is. It's the Apple-ification of IT, and it's the iPhone-ification of IT. That's all it is. I mean,
great wedge.
People aren't asking for consumer products; they're asking for iPhones.
Although I would guess that a good business now would say, you know, if they're going to give somebody a phone, we'll say, here's your choices, but we manage the damn thing.
To some degree, right? Because there's a little bit of management, and then there's a lot of management. And what I'm curious about is, if you work at such a company, especially if you are in IT, I'm curious what level of management you're requiring before you allow your users to bring in their own devices, or whatever. So,
good. So email Thurrott.
Yeah. And this will guide future, you know, picks and so forth as well.
Yeah. I guess we've done our tip of the week, really. Buy an MP3 album from Amazon and get 20 gigs.
Yeah, the tip is simple. If you care about digital music and you spend a lot of time managing your collection and everything, I think this Amazon service is a great deal. And I think that the most people, if you, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know if you get 20 gigabytes of cloud storage or 20 more gigabytes. So I'm not sure if it's 20 or 25.
20 total.
It's a total of 20.
Yeah.
So 20 is probably enough storage for many people to store their entire collection up in the cloud.
Yeah, I think
so. All you have to do is buy an album. You know, Billy Joel's Greatest Hits is $5. I mean, whatever. You know,
they have 99-cent albums.
Yeah, buy a cheap album. You get 20 gigabytes of storage for free. It's a no-brainer. I mean, just like if you have an Android device and you know, you don't care for Amazon for some reason, seriously, visit Amazon.com every day and see what the paid app is. And you never know, you might want it.
Yeah, really.
So just check it out.
All right, we're going to get our Windows 7 app of the week. We've got a different one from the one Paul mentioned earlier. Also, Windows Phone 7 app of the week, a mobile app pick. We got a lot still to do. I want to briefly pick something for you for those of you who are spam sensitive. You know, I just was thinking the other day, I was looking at my Gmail account. I don't get spam anymore. Gmail does a great job, but even before it gets to Gmail, I run it through mailroute.info, and you know, I get bacon. I get stuff that mailing lists I subscribe to, things like that. But they're easy to opt out of, unsubscribe. I haven't seen a Viagra email or a Nigerian, millionaire scam I can't even remember when the last time I saw it. And it just happened kind of automatically. And I just love it. It's because since 2004, I've been using MailRoute, and MailRoute is a hosted service, so it just gets better and better and better. You don't do anything. It's for people who run their own server. The way I do my email, I have a number of addresses, all of which I control at server. And so what I've done is I've changed the MX records, say, for anything that goes to leoville.com to go through MailRoute first. Then they send it back on to leoville.com. And from there, I bounce it to Gmail. So Gmail is my storage. Where it gets, the secondary treatment, maybe the tertiary treatment of the sewage gets rid of the whatever remaining spam. Not much. MailRoute is just a great solution if you, for some reason, want to run your own email servers. A lot of businesses want to do that for privacy and security, and you don't want to buy a big hardware device. Try MailRoute. It's very affordable. Prices start at $2 per user per month for 10 users. And because of demand for the TWiT army, they're even individual accounts now, although really it makes more sense if you're running a server. $30 per user per year for individual users. And if you use the website mailroute.info to sign up, it's a special site that Tom over at MailRoute set up for us, you'll get 10% off for the life of your account, forever. This is a really good solution. If you run a big mail server, lots of big corporations, universities use MailRoute. This guy knows, he's the king of this stuff. Mailroute.info. Do yourself a favor and find out more. Mailroute.info. Let's see. We've got a Windows 7 app of the week, and I agree with you on this one. They're back, baby.
And owned by LogMeIn. No, LastPass.
Yep.
Yeah. So Xmarks, there's a kind of a colorful history there, right? I think it started as Foxmarks. It was a
Mitch Kapor was one of the big guys behind.
Was he really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Guy did Lotus 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, a little bit of history in there too. So it basically went cross-platform essentially as Xmarks, and then they were going out of business, and I think they basically announced, this is it, we're not doing this anymore. And then LastPass bought it, and they're updating it.
Isn't that great?
So it syncs bookmarks and some other things between browsers, and it works with all the major browsers, i.e. Firefox, Chrome, and Safari. And my only complaint is that there isn't a single installer. You have to, if you have multiple browsers installed, and I think most power users do, you have to download the separate installers for each browser and reboot the browser and all that stuff. But once you get it up and running, it's a way to move the bookmarks back and forth. And I don't actually do a lot with bookmarks typically, but lately I have been, and I've been using those, the browser bookmark bar that's in each browser. And the thing is, I've actually spent time like an idiot manually recreating bookmarks between different browsers because, I have all 4 of those browsers installed. So, without even having used this thing in the past, it occurred to me recently, I know this exists. Why am I making this hard on myself? And I just downloaded and installed this thing. And I know, I've got recommendations about this all the time. It works great. So this is a neat way to do it. Each of the browsers has
Chrome does a great job of this. But if you're cross-platform, it doesn't solve.
Or if you use multiple browsers.
That's what I mean.
And that's the thing. And I just, and or use multiple because people have Macs and PCs, right?
Well,
maybe
Chrome
they
will go cross operating system, but it won't go to Firefox.
No, of course. But what if you may want to use IE on Windows and Safari on the Mac or something, or whatever it is. I mean, it doesn't matter. Whatever permutation you choose, this will work across all those different lines, and I think that's what's really neat about
fantastic,
it. So, yeah, that's a good one.
Xmarks, and it's still free. Xmarks.com.
Yeah.
Windows Phone 7 app of the week.
Yeah, so this one, one of the things I'm starting on now that the updates are happening and my bitching and moaning is coming to a stop, I want to look you just got to look at Windows Phone platform. You think a little pragmatically now. It's going to be a while before the next update unless something changes. There are all these needs in the platform. What are the workarounds and what are the different ways we can fix problems that are in Windows Phone today so that you can use the thing and get the most benefit out of it and so forth. So in that light, this pick, and this is thanks to Mark Arsborn who pointed this out to me, and I believe there's one other app on Windows Phone that does this. It is a podcasting app.
We need this.
And the reason it's beautiful is because you can download podcasts over the air. So you could manage podcasts through Zune, and you could sync your podcast to the phone like a dope, or you could do it the modern way and just put them on the phone because that's where you're going to listen to them anyway.
That's great.
And this is a neat way to do that. Now, it's Windows Phone, so there's always a little annoying things. I mean, right now in this current version of the software, there's no way to do background downloading of third-party apps. So if you're going to download a podcast, it has to sit there running while it's downloading. It's not a problem for audio podcasts. It's something you can trigger. But if you're going to download a video onto the phone, which maybe I don't recommend, obviously, if you're not on Wi-Fi, that could take a while. So this is a limitation of the platform. But what it does do is allow you to end run around that limitation in Windows Phone where you can't download podcasts over the air. I guess you could also use it in tandem with the built-in functionality. So if you're out on the road, you go on a trip, a week's gone by, you've got new podcasts you want to listen to, you could download them through here while you're on the road only, and that would solve that problem. So it's a nice little app. It's very well done. Again, the only real limitations of it are not their fault. It's because you just can't do certain things in Windows Phone yet. So I think they'll get there.
I'm glad that they made this as a podcast person.
Yeah.
Finally, your mobile app pick of the week. I don't know. How is that different from your Windows Phone 7 app?
Because this is not for Windows Phone. It's for other mobile OSs. So in other words, the goal here is to find things that work, allow you to work with Windows in different ways. People run Windows on their PCs, but they have Android phones and they have iPhones and they have iPads. And, I want to look mostly at integration pieces. I'm not going to recommend a game like Angry Birds on the iPad or something. This is stuff that helps you work with Windows. This one I picked first. I know there are a lot of remote desktop solutions for mobile platforms, and I know I'm going to hear from people, and I do want to hear from you about your choices because my expectation is because these things are so popular, especially with IT pros and people who support other computer users, that there's a need for remote access, and that it's not always going to be.
There's something cool about seeing the Windows 7 on your iPad. It's really cool.
Yeah. Now, I happen to use LogMeIn, and I actually pay for LogMeIn. There are advantages to doing that.
Paul.
And I don't. Hold on. But there are free versions of LogMeIn. The mobile app, unfortunately, you do have to pay for it. But on the iPhone and iPad, it's $29. You only pay once, and you can use it forever. And I have to say, the experience of remote desktop on an iPad to a PC is actually decent. I would just say on a phone, an Android phone or an iPhone or whatever, it's kind of a last case. You're like, this is the only option I have. Okay, maybe. But it is usable on an iPad. It actually works pretty well. I think that I use remote, and I want to be careful about this. I think of it as remote access differently than other people in that I don't personally typically need the desktop. I'm not looking to interact with a remote computer as you would if you were sitting in front of it, with the mouse and keyboard and all that stuff. What I typically need is I'll go on a trip. I have my file store up in the server, and that's how I use LogMeIn, by the way. They have on the paid version, they have what is essentially an FTP-like access to your server or to your PC. I use it on the server. And what it allows me to do is download the work-related files I need when I'm on the road. And I use it all the time, and it works great. I also do things like when I go on a trip, I'll back up my photos from the laptop to my home server over LogMeIn. So this is it works with the free version of LogMeIn. The free version of LogMeIn only provides the service, which I think most people are looking for, which is the interactive desktop, which I don't typically need. But if you pay for LogMeIn, and then you can install the free version of LogMeIn on other computers, you actually do get those other capabilities through this LogMeIn Ignition client. So anyway, I'm guessing based on your reaction, you have a different choice or a
well. Go to My PC has a free iPad app.
Okay, there you go. So right, I just don't have experience with it.
Yeah, no, you should try it. It's if you're going to pay for LogMeIn. I mean, I understand why people use LogMeIn and TeamViewer; they're free. But if you're going to pay for a service, you should try Go to My PC before you try. Yeah.
So my intention is to actually try both those things you just mentioned.
Get your account, Paul.
Okay. So a lot of people have written me about TeamViewer. That's one. I will say, and you may be able to prove differently to me. I'm not a big fan of the VNC type clients. You know, there's something.
It's a little sluggish, isn't it?
And it also feels like a malware payload, doesn't it? There's something good about VNC.
Yeah.
You almost can't trust some of the clients, and
that's why I pay for it. Yeah.
So
I think I think you'll be pleased. You know, there's a lot of proprietary technology in getting stuff to be speedy.
Yeah. Well, you know, in the Windows world, we have that notion of remote desktop connection. You know, and when you're within a firewall and you want to, I do this all the time at home. Actually, I remote desktop into my home server all the time.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Home server is in the cellar. It's not connected to a monitor. It's very simple on the same network to use remote desktop connection to do that stuff. Once you talk about jumping beyond firewalls and getting inside of other networks, things get a little more complex. And I think at that point, a third-party solution, you know, would make more sense. And I understand why people would tend toward the free things like VNC, you know, because they're free. But I in my experience, you know, this stuff I've used has worked well. So that's where I started.
Absolutely worth a try. A good choice. Paul, we're we're at the end of the notes.
We're out of stuff.
We're out of stuff. Hard to believe. Paul Thurrott is the man in charge of the SuperSite for Windows, winsupersite.com. Super. A lot of, in fact, I would say everything we talk about on the show is elaborated upon there.
Is there or soon will be.
Soon as you can type it in.
I've written like for the LogMeIn thing. I've actually written a review that's not up yet. It's just not complete. And then again, the Amazon stuff, same thing. It's a fairly lengthy review in that case. I just haven't completed it. So soon, it will be up soon.
Well, that's the beauty of it. There's more stuff all the time at the SuperSite for Windows. He's also news editor of Windows IT Pro, analyst for Penton Media, the author of the great Windows 7 Secrets. And look, right there on the front page, Windows 8 Secrets. You can find out all about it there. Join us as we do this show every Thursday morning, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, live.twit.tv. You can watch live, hear all the expletives that we delete out of the shipping version.
We're like sailors.
Yeah, we swear like sailors in this show. And, of course, you can get copies of this show in audio and video everywhere better podcasts are distributed, including Bringcast. And you could also, of course, just come to our website, twit.tv. You'll find all of our shows there, including Windows Weekly, Mac Break Weekly, This Week in Tech, This Week in Google, Security Now, all that great stuff. Paul, thank you. It's great to talk to you, and we will see you next week on Windows Weekly. I like the pregnant pause.
Got to add that.
On Windows Weekly.